duvet is? Just a blanket. Now, why do guys like you and I know what a duvet is? Is this essential to our survival? In the hunter-gatherer sense of the word, no. What are we then?
Consumers.
Tyler Durden is that character you just want to listen to. His charisma is captivating, and his ideas about freedom and rebellion sound so convincing that it feels like he's telling the absolute truth.
It's only after we've lost everything that we're free to do anything.
But if you stop and think, questions start to pop up. What's really behind his philosophy? Is it truly a path to freedom, or just a nice packaging hiding something else?
I say let's evolve. Let the chips fall where they may.
Stop trying to control everything and just let go.
And what did he really mean when he said his famous line?
Self-improvement is masturbation. Now self-destruction.
Let's break down Tyler Durden's philosophy, how it works, which ideas and philosophical movements influenced it, and most importantly, was he right in saying that self-destruction leads to freedom? Let's quickly go over the plot. The main character is an unnamed narrator, an ordinary office worker stuck in an endless routine. He suffers from insomnia and tries to fill the emptiness inside by buying things.
Like so many others, I had become a slave to the IKEA nesting instinct. If I saw something clever, like a little coffee table in the shape of a yin-yang, I had to have it.
But neither his apartment, furnished with catalog furniture, nor his job, nor even the support groups he attends to feel something real, bring him any real relief.
You cry now.
Everything changes when he meets Tyler Durden, a charismatic anarchist who preaches the destruction of the system and freedom from the chains of modern society.
How's that working out for you? What? Being clever? Great.
After a trip, the narrator returns to find his apartment blown up and all his things destroyed.
Or when a volcanic blast of debris that used to be your furniture and personal effects blows out of your floor-to-ceiling windows and sails flaming into the night.
He ends up moving into Tyler's rundown house on the outskirts of town.
Can I stay at your place?
Yeah.
Together, they create Fight Club,
Gentlemen, welcome to Fight Club.
an underground community where men shed their social masks by fighting each other. It's here that the narrator unexpectedly finds inner peace. Gradually, the club turns into something bigger, the Project Mayhem.
Man, I see in Fight Club the strongest and smartest men who've ever lived. I see all this potential, and I see it squandered.
Tyler gathers an army of followers and leads them to destroy consumer culture and the very system that oppresses them. His goal is to destroy everything to the ground in order to build a world free from the power of money and brands. Tyler's ideas sound radical and inspiring.
You're not your job. You're not how much money you have in the bank. You're not the car you drive. You're not the contents of your wallet. You're not your fucking khakis.
But the climax of the story changes everything. The narrator realizes that Tyler is just a part of his mind, the embodiment of all his repressed desires, fears, and ambitions. If we don't dive into the details, Tyler Durden's philosophy sounds inspiring. It challenges the usual way of life, exposes the issues of modern society, and makes us think about what really matters to us. Tyler tells us an uncomfortable truth. Our obsession with things, status, and success is not freedom, but chains we put on ourselves. That's why his ideas are so captivating. But if you look deeper, many questions arise. Let's break down one of Tyler's most provocative statements.
Self-improvement is masturbation. Now self-destruction.
If taken literally, it sounds illogical and even absurd. Those who agree with this idea usually clarify that Tyler isn't criticizing true self-development, but rather its fake version, the one sold to us by coaches, motivational speakers, and pop culture. In this context, personal growth turns into self-love and ego-boosting, rather than real change. But even if personal development is clear, the main question remains: what exactly is self-destruction? It turns out that the meaning of Tyler's phrase completely depends on how we understand these terms. To explore this further, let's look at the works of French philosopher and sociologist Jean Baudrillard. If you've ever been curious about the making of The Matrix, you probably know that Jean Baudrillard's book, Simulacra and Simulation, was one of the main sources of inspiration for the Wachowskis. In fact, the directors even recommended that actors read it before shooting. But here's the interesting part. Baudrillard himself wasn't thrilled with the Matrix. He claimed that his ideas had been misunderstood and distorted. And you know what? I agree with him. Because if we talk about a true interpretation of Baudrillard's philosophy, Fight Club is actually much closer to his views. To understand this, let's start with one of Baudrillard's most famous allegories. In his treatise, he refers to a fictional empire from Borges' story on exactitude in science. In this tale, imperial cartographers create a map of their country with such precision and detail that it covers the entire territory. However, over time, the empire falls into decay, and the map begins to disintegrate, leaving only small scraps in the desert. Baudrillard uses this metaphor to explain his key idea. In the modern world, images created by mass culture no longer reflect reality. Just like the map ceased to be a representation of the territory, symbols, brands, and ideals now exist separately from the real world, turning it into a hyperreality. As a result, reality disappears behind these simulacra, copies that no longer reflect anything but themselves. His ideas about hyperreality, simulacra, and a postmodern society where reality is replaced by artificial copies resonate strongly with Tyler Durden's philosophy. In Simulacra and Simulation, Baudrillard argues that modern society has lost its connection to authentic reality. We live in a world where things and values have lost their true meaning, turning into images and symbols. The brand logo has become more important than the product itself. Tyler Durden responds to this with a fierce critique of consumerism. His words challenge the culture of simulacra, where identity is defined by possessions.
You are not your job. You're not how much money you have in the bank. You're not the car you drive. You're not the contents of your wallet. You're not your f***ing khakis.
He suggests we destroy this illusion to restore the true essence of humanity.
Out these windows, we will view the collapse of financial history. One step closer to economic equilibrium.
Baudrillard's hyperreality is a state in which the boundary between the real and the imaginary is blurred. We immerse ourselves in a world of simulations, where the artificial seems more real than reality itself. The narrator of Fight Club lives in this hyperreality before meeting Tyler. His life is a career, IKEA furniture, and a false sense of fulfillment through purchases.
Personal office unit, the Hovertrek home Exerbike, or the Yohanneshav sofa with the string green stripe pattern.
Tyler pulls him out of this state, showing him that true reality lies beyond hyperreality, in pain, struggle, and the renouncement of materialism.
The ability to let that which does not matter truly slide.
Baudrillard also saw consumer culture as a tool that strips people of freedom. When we buy things, we're not just meeting our needs, we're striving for social status. Tyler Durden breaks this model by creating Fight Club, a space where individuals are liberated from the constraints of society.
I should have been upset about my nice, neat, flaming little shit, but I wasn't.
A tie is a perfect example of a simulacrum. Originally, like many clothing items, it had a practical purpose. In the 17th century, it was used as a scarf or handkerchief to protect the neck. However, over time, the tie lost its functional role and transformed into a symbol. Today, it no longer keeps you warm or serves any practical purpose, but has become an essential part of business attire and a marker of corporate identity. The tie is no longer tied to a real necessity. It only exists in the meaning that society has assigned to it. It has become a simulacrum.
He was wearing his yellow tie. I didn't even wear a tie to work anymore.
All right, man. Lose the tie.
Similarly, watches have long stopped being mere devices to measure time. They've become a status symbol. A car is no longer just a mode of transportation, but an indicator of financial standing. All of these items are less and less related to their original function, but still play an important role in social life, creating the illusion of significance. The narrator of Fight Club sometimes feels that the world around him is unreal, and he refers to his insomnia.
With insomnia, nothing's real. Everything's far away.
This sensation comes from the fact that society constantly creates new simulacra, which are no longer based on reality, but merely repeat old images. Each new layer of copies moves us further from the original.
Everything's a copy of a copy of a copy.
Like a photocopy where each subsequent copy loses more connection with the original image.
I couldn't sleep. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't sleep.
At some point, the true meaning is lost, and no one can say what was there at the beginning. Look at the narrator's office. The people there have become simulacra themselves. They all drink the same coffee, do the same monotonous work, and create more and more copies.
Everything's a copy of a copy of a copy.
Isn't this a perfect illustration of Baudrillard's ideas? But the most massive simulacra are the brands of large corporations. Their logos and names have become so influential that they're often more important than the product itself. Nike, Apple, Coca-Cola, these aren't just companies. They're symbols that shape our perception of reality. We're not buying sneakers, we're buying an image. Not a phone, but status. Not a drink, but a mood. These brands have turned into independent entities, completely detached from their original purpose. Maybe in the future, their names will even be used for constellations or planets. After all, brands are already becoming the map that replaces the territory, hiding reality beneath their logos.
When deep space exploration ramps up, it'll be the corporations that name everything. The IBM Stellar Sphere, the Microsoft Galaxy, Planet Starbucks.
For Baudrillard, old structures of reality no longer work. That's why, according to Tyler, the only way to reclaim authenticity is to destroy the system. This idea is embodied in Project Mayhem. Destroying banks, erasing debts, these are ways to wipe out the artificial order and clear space for something new. Tyler is literally realizing Baudrillard's dream, the destruction of simulacra. Baudrillard wrote that the same thing happens with states, power, and institutions. He said the dream of seeing all of this explode under the weight of its own contradictions is nothing more than a fantasy. But Tyler Durden makes it a reality. The narrator of Fight Club lives in a world of hyperreality. His life is filled with a hated job, things that are supposed to define his identity, an emptiness that can't be filled by purchases. Jean Baudrillard argued that in a world where commodities have become meaning, and meaning has turned into a commodity, people find themselves trapped in a web of simulations and copies. We chase after things that promise us authenticity and individuality. But how can furniture, mass-produced in thousands of copies, highlight uniqueness? Baudrillard called this the atomization of consumption, where each person builds their identity from ready-made elements offered by the market.
I'd flip through catalogs and wonder, what kind of dining set defines me as a person? I had it all, even the glass dishes with tiny bubbles and imperfections, proof that they were crafted by the honest, simple, hard-working indigenous peoples of...
We buy eco-friendly products, natural materials, organic vegetables, and special wild rice, hoping to reclaim authenticity. But all of these are just simulacra, images of things disconnected from their essence and turned into independent symbols.
We are byproducts of a lifestyle obsession. Television with 500 channels. Some guy's name on my underwear.
Another name worth mentioning in this context is Guy Debord, the author of The Society of the Spectacle. His work inspired many philosophers, including Baudrillard himself, and his ideas closely align with the world of Fight Club. Guy Debord described modern society as a spectacle, a system where real life is replaced by its images. In this world, everything becomes a show. The things we buy, the roles we play, even our dreams. Everything is turned into a commodity, sold under the guise of freedom and happiness. The spectacle creates the illusion of a full life, but in reality, it only deepens alienation. People no longer interact directly. Their communication happens through media, brands, and symbols. In such a society, reality loses its meaning, and images become more important than substance. The narrator of Fight Club is a spectator of his own life. His apartment is like an IKEA catalog. His job is a meaningless ritual.
You want me to deprioritize my current reports until you advise of a status upgrade?
Make these your primary action items.
He doesn't control his fate. He simply watches it unfold, like a show where his role has already been scripted by the system. But Fight Club is an anti-spectacle, a space where people shed their social masks. And Project Mayhem is an attempt to destroy the spectacle itself. Now that we've taken into account Jean Baudrillard's ideas about simulation and hyperreality, as well as Guy Debord's theory of the spectacle and the illusion of authenticity, Tyler Durden's famous phrase takes on a completely different meaning.
Self-improvement is masturbation. Now self-destruction.
Tyler critiques self-improvement as part of the spectacle society. In this context, self-improvement is not a real path to change, but another illusion sold by the system. It's the motivational books, the self-help seminars, the perfect bodies on advertisements, none of which actually help someone become better, but only create a simulation of success. As Baudrillard said, reality is replaced by its copy. And in the case of self-improvement, this copy isn't true progress. It's just a way to feed the ego without allowing someone to truly change. Self-destruction, on the other hand, becomes an attempt to break down the existing system to get closer to something real.
It's only after we've lost everything that we're free to do anything.
Tyler Durden's philosophy seems incredibly convincing at first. His criticism of consumer society, mocking brands and symbols, and fighting against imposed roles, all of this sounds right and inspiring.
Reject the basic assumption of civilization, especially the importance of material possessions.
But the problems arise when we begin to think about how to implement this philosophy in real life. Let's break down where these issues lie. Tyler Durden represents the person who fights against the existing system. He wants to destroy the consumer society, tear down the foundations, and eliminate the symbols of capital. But here's the question: what comes after that? What replaces this system? Tyler doesn't offer concrete solutions. His ideal is a world where people hunt with bows among the ruins of skyscrapers, which looks more like a fantasy than a real alternative.
In the world I see, you're stalking out through the damn canyon forest around the ruins of Rockefeller Center. You'll wear leather clothes that will last you the rest of your life. You'll climb the wrist-thick cuts of vines that wrap the Sears Tower. And when you look down, you'll see tiny figures pounding corn, laying strips of venison in the empty carpool lane of some abandoned superhighway.
If everything is destroyed, what will the new order be based on? Violence, altruism, brotherhood? Tyler opposes imposed rules, hierarchies, and structures, yet he creates new ones.
The first rule of Fight Club is, you do not talk about Fight Club.
Fight Club was originally a place where men could shed their social masks and feel free, but it quickly transforms into a system with strict rules, where everything is subordinated to Tyler's authority.
Like a monkey ready to be shot into space. Space monkey.
The irony is that in destroying one structure, Tyler immediately creates another. He denies culture, yet becomes a cult figure himself. His followers lose their individuality, replacing one system of submission with another. This isn't liberation, it's just another cycle. Tyler despises consumer culture, yet he doesn't seem like someone who rejects it. The fashionable clothes, the stylish appearance, it all looks more like an advertising image than a protest. He fights against the symbols of capital, but he himself becomes a symbol. His philosophy of self-destruction is sold just like fashionable goods and training seminars. All of this leads us to the paradox of resistance. As Jean Baudrillard once said, attempts to destroy the system often only strengthen it. Tyler seeks to go beyond hyperreality and simulacra, but his actions become part of that same system. Even the fight against consumer society turns into a commodity. Fight Club, from a resistance idea, turns into a brand. Tyler Durden's philosophy becomes another element of the spectacle. We fight against imposed rules, but we create new ones ourselves. We destroy one hyper-reality, but another emerges in its place. Tyler talks about freedom, but his philosophy doesn't free us from illusions. It just creates new ones. Is Tyler Durden right? His philosophy is indeed inspiring, and his critique of consumer society sounds convincing. His call for freedom resonates with millions. But as we see, his path leads to chaos and destruction. Despite the important questions he raises, we often forget that Tyler Durden and the narrator are the same person. Fight Club is not just a story about fighting the system. It's a story of the inner conflict that unfolds within each of us. Tyler is a reflection of our suppressed desires, fears, and aspirations for change. The main message of the film is not about destroying the system, but about stopping the self-deception. It's about accepting reality as it is, acknowledging our weaknesses, taking responsibility for our actions, and perhaps finding true freedom not in destruction, but in understanding and harmony with ourselves. Tyler Durden is not a hero who will show us the way. He is a prism through which we see our inner contradictions. And it is in this that his true value lies. Fight Club is actually a multi-layered film. And in this review, I've only touched on one of its layers. While working on this episode, I discovered that at least 5 different philosophical concepts influenced Fight Club. Whether we dive into them in future episodes depends directly on your engagement. If you want to see a continuation, let me know in the comments and give this video a like. The number of likes and comments will show how much you're interested in this topic, and subscribing to the channel will ensure you don't miss future episodes.